please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I guess we should do this. All right, we're going to start with our organization of the School Board of Trustees, and we'll start with the swearing in.
I think so.
So I'm going to say the first thing, and then if you'll state your name, I'll go down the line. Okay. I, please state your name,
Cindy Suze,
Louise Talent.
Janice Malcolm,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana
and the laws of the United States
and the laws of the United States
and the State of Indiana.
and the State of Indiana.
I will faithfully execute
I will faithfully execute
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
as a member of the governing body
as a member of the governing body
of the Lake Central School Corporation, so help me God.
of the Lake Central School Corporation, so help me God.
Congratulations on being elected.
Okay, and now we will go to our election of officers. Do we have a nomination?
Madam President, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we retain the slate of officers for 2025 that we maintained for the last year's 2024.
And I will second that motion.
Do we have any discussion or any other nominees? Hearing none, I have to do it by roll call, excuse me. We'll have to do individual roll call. Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Dr. Malco. Aye. Ms. Talent.
Aye.
Ms. Kelly.
Aye.
And I am an aye. Motion passes. Okay, then we have the reaffirmation of School Board Code of Ethics. Do we have a motion to accept those?
I will make a motion to accept those.
Motion from Ms. Kelly,
I'll second.
second from Ms. Talent. Any discussion? Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Dr. Malco. Aye. Ms. Talent.
Aye.
Ms. Kelly.
Aye.
And I am an aye. Our establishment of school board compensation. Do we have a motion from Dr. Malco?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Talent. Any discussion? Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malco? Aye. Ms. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Motion passes. Appointment of the treasurer. Do we have a motion to accept? School attorneys? Oh, excuse me, appointment of school attorneys. Thank you, Dr. Malco. Do we have a motion to accept the appointment of school attorneys? Aye. Motion from Dr. Malco, and I will second that. Any discussion?
Could you reiterate the names of the attorneys, please?
I'm going to ask for Dr. Veracco's help on that, please.
So our general house in counsel is the firm of Christ Sears and Zick, and we are represented mainly by Jackie Pillar and somewhat by Michael Sears. For special ed support, we have Monica Conrad of Lewis Campus, and for our hearings beginning this semester, we're going to use, Sarah? Angie Jones, thank you.
Thank you for those names.
I'd just like to add that for a bond counsel, when it comes to issuing any debt, we utilize Jimmy Shanahan with Taft and Associates out of Chicago. That was also included in your packet.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malco?
Aye.
Ms. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Appointment of our treasurer.
Move to approve.
We have a motion from Dr. Malco,
I'll second.
second from Ms. Kelly. Any discussion?
Would you identify that person, please?
It'd be Kathy Ramba to maintain her current role as a corporation treasurer.
Thank you.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malco?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I am an aye. We'll move on to our liaison appointments. At this time, everyone is going to retain their current committees. The only thing that I ask is that we remove the construction committee because that committee person is no longer needed. So do we have a motion to approve those appointments?
I make a motion to approve the appointments.
Motion from Mrs. Talent,
Second,
second from Dr. Malco. Any discussion?
just a reminder that I may need to change, so mine is flexible at this point in time, and I can let you know if there are changes required.
And that would be for which committee?
What? Oh, that was for the Lake Central Education Foundation.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malco?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Motion passes. We have a conflict of interest policy.
Move to approve.
Motion from Dr. Malco. I will second that. Any discussion? Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malco?
Aye.
Ms. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Motion passes. Do we have a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting.
We have a motion from Ms. Kelly.
I'll second that.
Second. We are adjourned. Okay, we're going to adjourn our school board meeting. I'm sorry, we're going to call to order our school board meeting. We're going to start with our agenda approval, deletions, additions. Dr. Baracco.
Seek board approval for the agenda, the amended agenda that you have before you. The amended agenda includes some additional personnel recommendations under 7B1, an additional professional leave request under 7D1, and we are tabling 7F, Director of Facilities Bill Ledger's presentation on NIPSCO incentives and energy optimization until our second meeting in January.
Motion to approve?
Motion for Ms. Kelly,
Second?
second from Ms. Talent. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Dr. Malco.
Aye.
Ms. Talent.
Aye.
Ms. Kelly.
Aye.
And I am an aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Is there any correspondence this evening?
There is not, Mrs. Hughes.
Thank you. We'll go into our liaison committee updates. Mr. Marshall.
Nothing to report this evening, thank you.
Ms. Kelly.
My committees do not meet until later this week and next week, so I'll have something at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Talent.
Our groups also will be meeting in the next couple weeks, so I have nothing.
Dr. Malco.
Nothing to present at this time.
And my committees, I have nothing to present either. So we'll move into our official school board business topics consent agenda. Dr. Varacco.
Thank you, Mrs. Seuss. We seek board approval for the regular board meeting minutes from Monday, December 9th, and our executive session from Monday, December 16th, 2024. Also seek board approval for the claims, payroll, and extracurricular expenditures that you received in your packets last week.
Move to approve those recommendations.
Motion from Dr. Malco, and I will second those. Any discussion? Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malco?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Motion passes, and there's no public comments regarding those action items, so we'll move into our official school board business topics, regular agenda. Dr. Veraco? You don't have anything on the agenda, so we're going to move to our Assistant Superintendent, Mrs. Castaneda.
Thank you. For my first item, I am seeking the board's approval for the personnel recommendations, the amended copy you received this evening.
I will make a motion to approve those.
We have a motion from Ms. Kelly,
I'll second.
second from Mrs. Talent. Any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malco? Aye. Ms. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Motion passes.
And then for my second item, I'm going to do a brief presentation on the final high school diploma changes. You have a copy at your station, or you're welcome to move to the seats as well. So back in March of 2024, if you recall, the Department of Education proposed significant changes to the Indiana High School Diploma. During the public comment period, there were many students, administrators, teachers, community members who shared their concerns about that initial draft from the Department of Education. Thankfully, in August of 2024, the DOE shared a second draft that was much improved, and then they had another public comment period that took place. And then on December 11th, the State Board of Education met, and the board voted to unanimously approve the final version of the diploma changes. So what I'm going to do is go through that quickly with you. So on the left side, you see what was our old Core 40 diploma, and then on the right is what you see as the future new Indiana diploma. This didn't change much from the second draft. There's a great deal more flexibility in that in every subject area, there's usually 1 or 2 required courses, such as English 9, Algebra 1, Biology, and then after that, students have a great deal of flexibility of selecting which courses they want to take in order to meet the rest of the requirements. And then these are the remaining subjects as well. So 42 total credits to graduate. In most school districts, students have between 50 and 60 credit opportunities over their 4 years of high school. So that's a very reasonable threshold in terms of the credits. And then if you'll recall, the second draft, they introduced this concept of seals. And so the first set of seals are the honors seals. From the second draft to the final draft, they left a great deal of it the same. What changed are the areas that I've highlighted. For example, under the enrollment honors seal, it had originally said that they had to take an AP course and pass the corresponding AP test. Many parents, teachers, community members weighed in and said that students who go through the rigor of an AP course should be able to count that towards this requirement, because some of the AP exams are challenging to get that passing score of a 3 on. And so they listened to the field, thankfully, and now it says that they have to take the AP course, they have to take the corresponding exam, which many of our students do, but they don't necessarily have to pass it, because that's a little bit more challenging. And it also wasn't a requirement that they put in for some of the other areas, such as IB. They also allow students to combine things now under this revision. So before they had it laid out by AP or dual credit or IB, now you can combine those, which is something that's beneficial to Lake Central because we have a lot of dual credit courses as well as a lot of AP courses. So this will allow more of our students to meet that mark. Under the employment honors seal, they felt that it was a little too narrow in that first bullet point of having students complete 3 courses in a CTE pathway. And so what they added was that they also could complete an approved locally created pathway or a career preparation experience. And so that gives them a little more flexibility there. They did increase the amount of hours for work-based learning, which was surprising. It went from 100 hours to 150 hours, which is a bit of a leap. But they did put in there, if you look at the parentheses, that it's got more flexibility. It can be paid, unpaid. They stated during the State Board of Education presentation, it could be during the school day, which is traditional work-based learning. It could also be after-school jobs, summer employment, and other things like that. And then under the enlistment honor seal, the second bullet point asked them to achieve a certain score on the ASVAB and complete one of the following. The career exploration program from the military is quite difficult to administer. And so what the Department of Education is going to do is come up with their own career exploration tool that will be much more user-friendly to school districts. So we appreciate them putting that flexibility in there. Then for the Honors Plus seals, which are the next level of seals that students could earn, for the enrollment seal, the first column, they decreased the work-based learning hours from 100 hours to 75 hours, so we appreciate that reduction there. And then in the last column under enlistment, in addition to scoring 50 or higher on the ASVAB, they added the flexibility of enrolling in a collegiate ROTC program or being accepted to a service academy. So again, giving a few more options and a little more flexibility for those seals. So in terms of resources and guidance, the Department of Education said that they'll be releasing quite a bit during this second semester of this school year. They're going to give guidance on the eligible courses for each area. They're going to give more information about work-based learning. They're going to give a list of credentials of value because that phrase was in there, but there wasn't a ton of clarification of what exactly that entailed. And they're also going to develop an interactive advising tool over the spring and summer to help school districts and counselors in particular assist students and families with this new process. If you recall, it goes into effect with the incoming freshman class, or our class of 2029. Our current students may opt in using the new model if they wish starting this next school year for the 25-26 school year, but in order to use it, they have to earn a seal. So they can still graduate under the old Core 40 model, or they can opt into this, but the caveat is if they opt in, it has to be with a seal. They're really pushing that students graduate with some sort of currency or credential, so they feel that the seals are a better representation of that. And then moving forward, any students wishing to graduate early, starting with that class of 2029, need to earn a seal. So all of our December graduates that typically departed will now have to have a seal in order to leave high school early. And then they're going to continue to work on dual credits. We offer a great deal of dual credits here. However, sometimes when students transition to the college and university level, they aren't always accepted as the course that was taken here. They're accepted only as an elective credit. And so what they've promised is that by the graduation of that class of 2029, that they're going to try to have the actual course credit be given to students instead of elective credit. So that'll take some work on their part at the university level. And then in terms of our implementation, we've already started analyzing the potential impact on our courses offered, as well as on our staffing for next school year. If you recall, when they released the second draft, we made the decision to move forward and offer a computer science course in 8th grade in anticipation of these changes. And so our 8th grade computer teachers, working closely with Mrs. Schoeneman, have been able to already put that into place, which is huge because that's one credit that they'll head into high school with when they finish up 8th grade. They are going to review this new diploma model at our incoming freshman parent night, which is being held on January 23rd. If any incoming freshman parents are watching, given these changes, that presentation is probably going to take a little longer than normal. So plan accordingly. But we also know that one night isn't going to do this justice. And so we do have plans to start implementing various things in order to help inform both our parents and our students about these new changes. They want to create a video for parents. We want to share those resources that the state is going to release. And then we're also going to start putting together some lessons that they can do either during courses or during our PT classes for our students. Any questions?
I do. When you said that they need to earn a seal, are you talking the seals that are listed? The honor seal? Okay.
So in order to opt into this before class of 2029 or to graduate early, they're going to have either an honors seal or an honors plus seal.
And then I believe earlier in the presentation you mentioned simulations. What might a simulation look like, the employment?
Where did I
Yeah,
see?
paid, unpaid, on-site, or
So there is some new technology where they can do things online or remotely, and so that's, I assume, what they mean by a simulation. They haven't given us a ton of guidance on that piece. At the State Board of Education meeting, what they said was that they were going to give a lot more flexibility about when this could be done, because I think when people hear work-based learning, they think it's during the school day.
Have they given you any guidance when it says to demonstrate skill development, communication, collaboration, and work ethic?
No. So these are all the things that we want them to flesh out. For example, it says to meet an attendance goal. What is that attendance goal? Is it for one semester? Is it for their entire 4-year career? And so that's where we need a great deal more information from the state. So we still have a lot of questions, and they have promised us, because they know this is going to be a big lift for schools, to put out a lot more information during this next semester here. But we're definitely eager to get that, because the sooner we have it, the better off we can prepare.
So it's not the requirement of the individual schools to figure that out?
No.
But the direction will be given by the state?
Yes, there'll be consistent criteria given out by the state.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
We'll see. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you for that, and I understand, Dr. Bracy, you don't have anything to present. Thank you for coming out this evening. So we're going to move to our Director of Secondary Education, Mrs. Schoeneman.
Thank you. For my first item, I'm seeking the board's approval for the professional leave requests included in your updated packet.
Motion to approve?
Motion from Ms. Kelly. I will second that. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none. Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malko?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. For my second item, I'm requesting the board's approval for the field trip requests also included in your packet.
So moved.
We have a motion from Dr. Malko and a second from
Second.
Mrs. Talent. Any discussion or questions? Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malko?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent?
Yes, aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
And I see there's a lot that the Ryan Odell and the DART director for the high school are doing competitions not too far away in Illinois, but I encourage you to maybe try to get over there and see one. They work very hard.
I was telling Ryan recently that my neighbor is in the Guard, and I've noticed, I'll see the flag up above the roof line, and that's new, so they're progressing. But yes, he got all of his requests in here, so you'll see a lot from him. Thank you so much. And for my final item, I would like to invite Carrie Regan, Assistant Principal from Lake Central High School, up to share the Lake Central High School new course proposal. And I am sending down some information. Do you mind?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I am coming to you this evening to propose 2 new courses. We received an email in September of this school year from the Advanced Placement Program inviting us to apply for a pilot program for AP Cybersecurity. So I filled out the application in November. We found out on December 10th that we were accepted and approved to run that pilot program. So with your approval, of course, we are very excited to try to get that up and running, since that is certainly one of the major areas that people are interested in at this time. So I do have in the packet for you information for both of those courses. This would begin with the 25-26 school year. The first course that would be offered is the networking course. Both of these courses are year-long, and then in the 26-27 school year, we would offer the cybersecurity course. So it's a two-course pilot program that we are looking to run. We do have a teacher slated for this already. Mr. Todd Iwema has actually gone through the PLTW, I couldn't even think of it, training in the past, and he has taught this same type of course for a few years here at the high school. So he is, at this point, slated to potentially teach those courses. He's very excited about that. He will go through a week-long training over the summer with AP, so he will be ready to go in the fall for that.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name.
Mr. Todd Iwema. So he's taught a lot of our networking and digital apps, a lot of our computer type of courses, and he also has that background with cybersecurity already as well. So some of these things that we are looking to do is obviously expand opportunities and our interest in our AP program. We already have a pretty robust program as it is, but we're looking to expand that, and again, into one of those areas that's pretty high demand in the workforce. So we're looking for that, and also obviously things that students are interested to pursue after high school. So this fits into the new diploma requirements because it would fall under the science, technology, and engineering category. And because this is an AP class, students who earn a 3 or higher can potentially earn dual credit through college and have an opportunity to earn an honors or an honors plus seal with that as well. And we have been told that the College Board has been working closely with the IDOE, and this may become a part of the NLPS pathway as well, and that's part of our CTE program. So that is it for my course proposals for the AP Cybersecurity Pilot Program. Do you have any questions for me?
Sounds very exciting. You say that you were invited by the College Board. Are all schools invited? Or
No.
what happens to schools that are not invited? They just...
So as part of the pilot, we will be giving feedback, to the College Board to let them know how the program went. There's actually, I just found out that there was some schools that started the program this year. So they will be going into their second year, starting in the 25-26 school year. So this is new, obviously for us, but the whole point is to give them feedback, and then obviously if it's a popular program that takes off, then they would offer it, I'm sure, to all the other schools.
Fix it all up, right?
Exactly, yes. Yes, ma'am. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation, and also, how many students do you think, any idea about how many you would like to see enrolled, or?
I would love to see the class starting out with a minimum of 30, and that's a little bit high. I did ask, I had a meeting, actually a virtual meeting with someone from the College Board regarding this, and I did ask about class size. She would like to see a minimum 15, and I told her that's perfect because that's usually what we like to see in order to run a class. But I mean, ultimately, I'd like to start with at least 30, and I'm hoping we get that much interest. Just in case students do fall out and, maybe don't care for the program, I still want to have enough that we can run the second year as well.
And Mr. Iwema is definitely ready and rocking. You guys have all that you need, all the computers, all that, okay?
Yes, I did ask him. I said, is there anything on this list that you see that we don't have that we might need? And he said we should be good to go, so.
Well, thank you for applying for that. That is exciting.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Are there any other questions?
Do we need to call for a vote on it?
I don't believe so.
Do we need to approve it?
No?
No? Oh,
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Great, thank you for the energy.
And
Absolutely.
Mrs.
Thank you.
Regan, thanks for doing such a great job. She's always, so forward-thinking and just so thorough, and making sure that our kids have the opportunities, and just overseeing the business department. There's so many components there, so thank you.
Thank you, we appreciate you.
And then also in your course proposal packet, I've got some information about the Computing Foundations for a Digital Age. And so as Mrs. Castaneda shared in her presentation about the new diploma, we have already been offering this course, but I'll just tell you a little bit more about it. So once we became aware of the proposed diploma changes, And knowing that we already have our students, our middle school students, taking computers in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for one full semester, and knowing that we already have 2 computer science teachers per middle school, we were able to kind of jump ahead of the game, and the computer science teachers met last spring to develop the curriculum for what is now a required computer science course for the new diploma. And so the state has allowed that to be offered in 8th grade. We actually just completed our first semester of running that in 8th grade. And again, our 8th graders already are taking the computer class, so it was a matter of just mapping the course to meet the framework of 4565, which you'll see that on the following page as well. It just kind of takes you through the standards and what that course is. So we're very fortunate to be in that spot, and then have been able to collaborate with other districts to kind of share what we've learned through this process. And so we're beginning semester 2 with the second set of 8th grade students. The majority of the class of 2029 will begin high school with the required computer science course. And those students who are interested in pursuing more courses in computer science will be better prepared for the next computer science course in the sequence. The whole point of the state putting computer science here is to garner kids' interests and obviously help them to fulfill those job requirements. And then this course will be offered at the high school in the fall of '25 for students who did not earn the credit in 8th grade. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. And now our Director of Student Services, Mrs. Grimala.
Thank you. My only item tonight is to seek your approval for the professional leave requests that were included in your board packet.
So moved.
Motion from Dr. Malco,
I'll second.
a second from Ms. Kelly. Any discussion? Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malco?
Aye.
Mrs. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. James, our Director of Business Services.
Thank you. My first item is just to give the board an update on our tax collections for calendar year 2024. Tax bills go out twice a year, and then at the end of December, we have what's called settlement through the county auditor. So on December 24th, all taxing units in the county received their final tax settlement, and I can report that we had a collection rate of 100.2% of the taxes that were levied. So normally we collect around 98%. So we were happy. There must have been some delinquencies that must have been paid, or maybe some amounts that were being contested. But either way, we are happy with the payments, and we thank our taxpayers and our local businesses for paying their taxes timely. So that's all I have there. My next item is to give the board an update on our curricular materials reimbursement. If you recall, 2 years ago, the General Assembly put an appropriation in the 2-year budget of $160 million in order to fund curricular materials at the local public school level. With that in action, we no longer charge parents for the cost of those textbooks and consumable fees. Rather quickly last year, we all realized that that appropriation was not going to be enough to cover the costs of what we spend. We are hoping that maybe with this new budget session now, that will be addressed. Up until now, indications were that the legislators understood that, and they were hoping to do that, but we've seen the revenue reports from the state. They have some other issues they're dealing with on a funding level, the state level, so we'll see if that appropriation gets increased here come April or May when they finalize the budget. But for this school year, every school district in the state received a distribution of $157.96 per student. For us, that equated to just under $1.4 million, and that was significantly less than the $2.7 million of what our annual curricular costs are here for our population. So I'm not saying it's not good news. The only silver lining is we saw this coming. We've known about this for a year because the appropriation was the same. We knew what our student population is. And then come May, we'll have an idea how we're going to be affected for the next 2 years. Since we knew that we we're going to have this shortfall, we planned accordingly. It's part of my cash flows that I present to the board. And starting here, actually in January 1, now the Curricular Materials Fund, the old textbook rental fund, has actually gone away, and these expenditures will all now run through our education fund. So we'll have a higher budget through there, but that shortfall has to be made up in other areas. And so we are doing so, and we're planning accordingly. So.
That's a big shortfall.
Yeah, it's about $1.4 million. So, everyone that I've talked to across the state is short. Some people don't have the rigor as we do, so maybe their curricular costs are less, and maybe they were closer to this. Other schools may have more and have a greater percentage shortfall, but it seems being about this 55, 60% seems to be common. So we'll see what happens. We're pushing for more funding in this area, but it's out of our control, really. So, any questions on that?
It just seems odd to have such a variance to me. I thought it would be closer, more in alignment with what we needed.
Yeah, no. To be fair to the legislators, when they implemented the $160 million 2 years ago, they really, no one's been able to say where that number came from. And at that time, no one knew how it was going to play off, so no one really lobbied against it. It was like, okay, hey, we're going to get it. It was once all the data was compiled last fall, in the fall of 23, from all the school districts across the state, it's like, oh my gosh, this $160 million is not going to be close. Well, they were locked in for 2 years at that point. So, just like with anything, the information you have is most valuable. And then when you see things coming, you can adjust accordingly, and that's what we do here. So.
Well, I saw Mr. Slager yesterday, and he said he's working on changes to the property tax. So maybe that would give us more
Well, we'll see what happens, and we'll just put it that way. My next item is to seek your request for the, seek your approval, for the professional leave request in your board packet.
So moved.
Motion from Dr. Malco. I will second that. Any discussion? Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malco?
Aye.
Ms. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I'm an aye also. Motion passes.
Okay, my next item is to seek your approval for a transfer of a cash balance we have in our pension debt service fund. I'm happy to report that here in December, we paid off our pension bonds that the school district issued in 2004, similar to what many school districts around the state did. And so after we got our final tax settlement and after we paid the debt, the last payment on December 27th, the fund had a balance of $36,287.78. There is no more use for that fund because the bonds are paid off. So I seek your approval to move that money to our fund 0620, and that fund is where the original bond proceeds went into, and those bond proceeds pay for the severance and retirement of staff members, certified staff members who had 10 years of experience at that time. And each time someone is in that group, it's called the buyout group, we use these dollars to pay out their severance. So this would kind of go, it's kind of similar, it's kind of going for that same cause, and so we like to put that money in there to help that pot continue. So upon your approval, then that service fund will be closed out to zero and it will come off our books. So I seek your approval on the transfer from the pension debt service fund to the pension bond proceeds fund in the amount of $36,287.78.
Motion to approve that movement?
Motion from Ms. Kelly,
Second?
second from Ms. Talent. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malko? Aye. Ms. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. And my final item is to seek your approval for the donations that were included in your board packet.
So moved.
Motion from Dr. Malko. I will second that. Any discussion or questions? Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Malko? Aye. Ms. Talent?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll move on to our public comments, and we have one person signed up, and I'm sorry if I say your last name wrong, Mr. Koftanich? Kafnich, if you'd like to come up, please.
My son goes to Watson right now. He's in 3rd grade. I guess one of the questions I wanted to know is like, how many students are getting pulled out of Watson? You know, like, what's the like level of relief that school's going to get?
I don't have that data in front of me at this moment. I did present it at the December meeting, if you watch that tape, or if you call me tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
I'll pull that data back up.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just like trying to understand.
It's not that significant of a number because it's really only Warning Crest and Walden Clearing.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, like, we're not thrilled about, like, having our kid, have to change schools, it's disruptive. And, one of the important things, like, when we moved to St. John was the school, the education, and, just having the stability. And I guess another question I wanted to ask was, like, what was kind of the thought process in having Warning Crest go to Watson in the first place? I mean, he's only been there 3 years and he's already getting moved. Like, what's changed since then, and, why is it happening?
Right, so if you go to our website, you can see the elementary boundaries on the first page under About Lake Central. And you'll see that we had certain sections that are like your neighborhood is surrounded by Coling Clark.
Okay.
But because Coling was maxed out, we had to convert part of the library into a classroom. They were beyond capacity, and we had space at Watson. So before the first hole was dug, we told the developers of those two neighborhoods, you need to tell your families that they're going to be going to Watson and Grimmer because that's where we have space. And that's sort of the way a consolidated school district operates. We serve 3 towns and unincorporated St. John Township. So if we have to redraw the lines so that we don't raise people's taxes just because if you look at our population, we have, two elementary schools in Dyer, 3 in Cherville, and only 1 in St. John. Well, as long as we have space, we're not going to add another St. John Elementary School because that's not prudent financially. And so what we're really doing now is moving your neighborhood back where it originally belonged, mainly because the population of Coling has dropped off significantly. And the neighborhoods surrounding Watson and Grimmer have started to turn over. So if you go back to the early 90s when I first came to Northwest Indiana, the children that I taught and coached were heavily concentrated in Grimmer-Watson area. Their parents now are in their 70s, and our demographer has told us that the neighborhoods won't really start to turn over in force until one of the people passes. People stay in their homes in Cherville, St. John, and Dyer because they're good communities to live in. And so we're at that point now where we have the space at Pfeiffer. We have the space at Bibbich. So, we can move one neighborhood in Dyer that's south of 30, the only neighborhood south of 30 in Dyer that currently goes to Protzman. We can move them back to Bibbich, where they used to go, and we can use this opportunity to take some pressure off Watson and put those neighborhoods back into Coling. It also, and it wouldn't be the only reason we make a decision, but it also does help our transportation department that they can have contiguous neighborhoods to serve people. The tricky part for you is you have the right to stay in Watson and finish your experience, but you have to transport. And in the past, when I was not at central office yet, and we did a redistricting, we allowed people to choose, but that's when we had ample numbers of drivers, so we could afford to send 2 drivers into the same neighborhood. Now we struggle daily just to run our routes. Our mechanics drive a lot, our director of transportation has to drive a lot, so we just don't have that luxury, and that's why we're in that pinch on transportation. But that's not the number one reason. The number one reason is when the opportunity presents itself to do some rebalancing. It could happen again in another 4 or 5 years, because the neighborhood just east of Renaissance is going to be a lot of homes, and that could, again, put pressure on Coaling. We just don't know, but for now, we think this cleans up those islands that we had in the district and takes some pressure off Watson. And a little off Protzman, too, by sending the Castlewood and Castleview neighborhoods back to Bibbich.
And I'm sorry, I think I kind of like got confused here, because you said like the area around Watson is kind of aging out a little bit, you know, the parents are getting a little bit older. So I guess why is Watson now like kind of overcrowded, if, you know, those?
Because those homes have started to turn. And so they're affordable homes.
Families are coming in.
They're affordable homes, and the people that are moving in have children again. And so we still have, you know, a lot of those to turn over, according to our demographer. And so we believe that that process has begun now, finally.
Okay. The only other question I would want to ask is like, obviously my kid's not looking forward to going to another school. There's another, you know, kid in our neighborhood who like cried when she found out that she had to go like meet new friends. You know, it's a scary thing for kids. I guess like, how do you like think about that? Like, what would you tell parents and like kids to maybe get them to feel good about this decision? To be like, all right, well, hey, you know, we're relieving pressure on the school, but maybe at the expense of like the kid, you know, in a way, you know, by having them go to a different school and having them make that adjustment. Like, I guess, how do we kind of feel good about this?
Well,
Or is it just something that has to be done, like financially, like from a teacher's perspective?
well, it's not from a teacher's perspective, but it is from a corporation's perspective in terms of being fiscally responsible. So if we have space in school, we'll reserve the right forever to move neighborhoods. These are just natural ones. I think one thing you can say is all of our neighborhood and our neighbors next to us, that neighborhood is getting moved too, and it's due to crowding, and it's due to population, spreading out the population. It's not a perfect solution. It's why people avoid it as much as they possibly can. When this thing started and Coaling was at 700 students instead of the 538 it is now, we were preparing to move several neighborhoods west of 41 to Bibbich as well. But now, looking at the data we have today, if we did some of those, we would be creating an imbalance at Kaler and Clark. And so is there a chance still that Kilkenny States, for example, which you can see the Bibbich water tower from your yard, in 4 or 5 years could be still moved to Bibbich? Sure, it can. I mean, that too would save us transportation dollars because they'd be very close. But right now we have to look at several factors, and one of those factors is what's the impact on the middle school?
One other thing, like, just curious, like, how much do you work with, like, the town council? I mean, if that's even who you would work with, like, you know, with all the development that's going on in St. John, try to, like, plan and, like, you know, try to avoid the redistricting as much as possible. Do you guys, like, work with them at all, or is it just?
Well,
they do what they want, you guys have to figure it out?
That's pretty much the way it works in Indiana. There are no impact fees. There aren't road impact fees. And so when towns rely heavily on permit fees, which our towns do, you know, you're going to see them be anxious to do developments. And you're going to see, well, we own a piece of land. Before we fixed the high school, we had purchased it on Blaine, both sides of Blaine between 101st and 93rd. We own 150 some acres there, and I'm sure people are going to be putting more pressure on us. As soon as the development gets up to the edge of our property, they're going to say, okay, your land's next. It's currently a farm. But, yeah, the towns do what they do, and then we respond accordingly. And it's how schools have been expanded, and, you know, in the past, when we were busting at the seams at all elementaries and the 2 middle schools, the decision was made to build Clark to house 1,000 students in middle school, because St. John didn't have a middle school, and also move the 5th grade out of elementary schools to the 3 middle schools to take pressure off the elementaries with only building 1 school. This community has historically been tax averse, especially so back then in the early 2000s. And so the people in leadership at that time didn't think they could build another elementary and a middle school to keep the elementary kids K to 5. So they made the decision to make the middle schools bigger and go 5 to 8, which is not an uncommon model, by the way. A lot of places do that.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. That makes sense. Just wanted to ask you some questions about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our board comments and consideration of future agenda items. Mr. Marshall.
I have nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Dr. Malco.
It is going to be a great 2025.
All right. Thank you. Mrs. Talent.
Well, ditto, I was going to say, I do wish our staff and students a really happy, healthy, and a prosperous new year, and thank you for all the work. And now time just flies. It goes so fast before it'll be the end of this school year.
Ms. Kelly.
I will echo and agree with Ms. Talent and Dr. Malco. Thank you.
And I echo all that, too. So with that, we'll turn it over to board calendar of future activities. Dr. Varacco.
Thank you. Our next meeting has been moved to Tuesday, the 21st, in honor of MLK Day, so we are here in 15 days. Thank you all.
Do we have motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
And I will second that.